Welcome into the Red and Blue Crew podcast. Brad Logan alongside David Johnson. Today's show, of course, brought to you by our good friends at the Velvet Ditch and the Land Shark. Two great locations to have a great meal and watch the game there in Oxford. Also, the Hearn Law Firm and the Dirt Doctor. David, it's signing day. A great time to have us come on together, talk about the recruiting and how things are going for Ole Miss, and just kind of your overall view. I know we're recording a little earlier in the day, so some things have to happen this afternoon. But your thoughts on recruiting so far?
Yeah, I think it's been a good day for Pete Golding. I think an exciting day for Ole Miss fans. The biggest, I guess, negative surprise was Jack Goldsberry flipped out of this class. He was a do-it-all, do-everything kind of player from Indiana. And of all places, he flipped to Purdue. As soon as he did, their defensive backs coach, Charles Clark, a former Ole Miss assistant, he hit me up on Twitter, was like, had to do it to y'all. And so that's probably been the biggest loss so far. There are still some big-time guys out there, Brad, that, we'll get answers from. Some this afternoon, some is going to be tomorrow. We're still waiting on Tavian Branch. He's the big defensive lineman, was committed to Penn State. Ole Miss is one of its 5 finalists. He visited down here. He'll announce at 3:15 Central Time. The other guy that I've got my eyes on is a 4-star wide receiver, Jace Matthews, committed to Auburn right now. And he right now is planning on making an announcement, not today, but Friday. And, you can get all conspiracy theories if you want to about why it may be Friday, but, I think he wants to see where Derek Nix is going to wind up. Derek Nix, the former longtime Ole Miss assistant, ended up being the offensive coordinator at Auburn, and Derek recruited Jace. So, with that being said, I can confirm without a doubt, 100%, there are conversations going on right now between Ole Miss and Derek about trying to bring Derek back to this staff, which likely has a big impact on Jace Matthews and where ultimately he signs. But I worked the phones this morning. My sources on Nix, as I'm reporting right now, are impeccable. And there are conversations going on, but nothing has been settled as of right now.
David, I asked you this before, I think because everybody has been so overshadowed with the coaching news of Pete Golding, the new head coach at Ole Miss. Recruiting kind of got lost a little bit. How would you say that Ole Miss's class is right now so far?
Very solid on the defensive side, and not bad on the offensive side. I mean, Lane Kiffin leaves. Charlie Weiss is ultimately going to leave. As Lane put it, he has loaned Charlie Weiss to Ole Miss. Charlie was never going to not coach in the playoffs. But, that's Lane Kiffin. He's telling a lot of mistruths here lately. But on the offensive side of the football, they got their quarterback in the 26th class, which is Reese Weiss, the kid out of Texas. He committed he signed this morning. And then more importantly, they got one of the nation's top running backs in Jaden Yates, the kid from Kemper County, Mississippi. Certainly, LSU tried to flip him, did not work. He is going to be an Ole Miss Rebel. He is signed and sealed. So, those are big, as well as Emmanuel Tucker, 4-star offensive tackle out of New Albany High School. Kiffin and LSU made a play for him. Didn't work. He stuck with Ole Miss, signed with Ole Miss this morning. I really think it's been a good day, and it's not over.
Defensively, David, with keeping the staff in place, specifically Pete Golding, defensive coordinator, there's some reports out there that Pete's going to bring in some additional coaches, but keeping Randall Joyner and that staff intact, how much has that helped the defensive side of the ball in regards to recruiting?
I think tremendously, particularly Randall Joyner, with the defensive line recruits. And, Brian Brown's on that staff. Wes Neighbors is on that staff. And Pete Golding is on that staff. I mean, Pete is now the head coach, but being a defensive guy and being such a very good recruiter, I think has played a big part. Really and truly, talking to the defensive guys over the weekend, I really never sensed any of them had any concern with Lane Kiffin leaving because Pete Golding was staying here. And ultimately, Pete's going to rebuild that offensive staff to a point where, I don't think Ole Miss fans are going to miss very much. And, I'm just excited about the playoffs coming up. And, and Pete getting his feet wet in the college football playoffs, which is unheard of. Of course, it's unheard of a sitting head coach leaving a playoff team. You're a couple of weeks away from pandemonium, and what the playoff committee did last night with this team, I think showed extreme confidence that having Lane Kiffin not here might affect your Twitter likes, but it's not going to affect your play on the field. Ole Miss, number 6, and in line to host a college football playoff game. And, I thought what Hunter Yurachek said is that there are really no data points to penalize his team because Lane Kiffin is not here. The defensive play caller is here. The offensive play caller is here. And it wouldn't be fair to penalize them. And I agree with that. I very much do. And people will take that back to, well, they left Florida State out because their quarterback got hurt. Well, you saw what Georgia did to Florida State in the bowl game. I mean, they beat them 70-something to whatever. But, I think it's a good day to be an Ole Miss Rebel. Recruiting's going good. And, the staff seems to be coming together very well as well.
David, let's talk about the here I am, the college football playoff poll numbers. And you're right. Hunter Yurachek did talk about the data points. But I'll admit, I was a little surprised they didn't drop. I was surprised they went up one. If not anything, I think it would have been a good thing for them just to stay where they were, but they went up one spot. And I think that goes to show you that Keith Carter was ahead of the curve by, number one, not allowing that data point for Ole Miss not having an interim coach. They've got a full-time coach, that there is no data point that Ole Miss has played without a head coach. And now college football is going to be played once again in Oxford. Were you surprised that Ole Miss actually moved up a spot?
Oh, I was. I was hoping they would maintain number 7. Actually thought they could drop to number 8. But, I mean, Brad, this is – and I think some of this is we're Ole Miss fans. And we've been used to getting screwed, so to speak. And so you expect the screwing that doesn't come, and, you breathe a sigh of relief, because I really thought we dropped down to number 8, and then anything could happen between now and Sunday. But being number 6, I don't see the Rebels falling out of the top 8. And, I feel confident there's going to be a playoff game with Ole Miss in it, and even more confident that it's going to be inside the Vaught Hemingway Stadium. So, I think it's a good time to be an Ole Miss Rebel. There's a little bit, you kind of sense this, but do you not feel there's a sense of relief that Kiffin is gone? Because look at all the former players that have jumped on Twitter to support Pete Golding, and, the fans' support of Pete Golding. And, I don't know that Ole Miss fans actually ever liked Lane Kiffin. And that's going to sound weird. You like the winning. I liked the winning. But I don't know if Ole Miss fans truly ever liked the man or the teenage boy that he often portrayed himself as. What are your thoughts on that?
I think when I watched last night, I was not at the basketball game, but from what I understand, it was a great crowd. And apparently, the only good thing that happened from the pavilion last night was Pete Golding addressed the crowd. My goodness, what is going on with the men's basketball team, Dave?
I don't know if they dropped 3 in a row, 3 tough opponents, but I just think they have to gel. Basketball is a sport where you are not the same team in November or December than you are in February. And the more they play together, the better they're going to be. I don't think it's time to push the panic button just yet.
I don't either.
But, you need to win. You need to win the next couple. That's for sure.
But, Pete Golding and a number of team members addressed the crowd, and it was loud. And forgive me if you said this, and I'm not giving you proper credit, but somebody said last night it felt like Ole Miss got its team back. And this follows up that Pete Golding, when the university announced that there was a press conference, and it was Pete's call, as you know, to pull that press conference back. It wasn't the university's. It was his call.
Right.
He did not want any shine off this team. He does not want any shine on him. I bet he didn't want to put on a shirt and tie. And,
I guarantee you.
It wouldn't surprise me if they never have an introductory press conference.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me either.
He is the most unlane person when it comes to the spotlight there is. And so that didn't surprise me. But he addressed the crowd, and somebody said it feels like that Ole Miss got its program back. I think you make a really good point. I think 2 things are true. Number one, Ole Miss is very appreciative. Maybe not as much right now as they will be in 5 years, but Ole Miss is very appreciative of Lane Kiffin and what he's done. The second winningest coach in percentage-wise in Ole Miss history. The first 11 win regular season in program history. 48 straight weeks in the AP Top 25 poll. Think about that, 48. That is just really incredible. And also is true is, it was his program. It wasn't anybody else's. In the statement he made, as you read, as everyone read, there was a lot of I.
Yeah, it was. But now there's a lot of correction going on because, I mean, look what Centurion Perkins tweeted.
Yeah.
Wasn't true. I was in that room. Ask anybody in that room. Bryson Sanders, the same thing. I mean, the players are calling him out for being a liar. And, again, I think everybody loved the winning Lane Kiffin brought to Ole Miss and give him credit for that. But, man, the guy himself, I don't know. I really don't know. But, nobody's going to sit back, media included, and say, damn Lane Kiffin when he's going 11-1. I find it amazing his former players are kind of calling him out. They're not kind of, they are calling him a liar. And kudos to Keith Carter. Went on Super Talk yesterday, and he said, this is incorrect, this is incorrect, this is incorrect. Went down a litany of things that Kiffin had said that just weren't true. Such as, I found out Sunday morning I couldn't coach the playoff team. That's a bogus lie. He found out 3 weeks ago if he was leaving, he would not coach this team in the playoffs.
I thought it was just so fitting. I thought it was a very candid interview on Super Talk when he talked about, when asked about a couple of different scenarios, and Keith was very kind, but he basically said that's just not true. He knew about that he wasn't going to be able to coach the college football playoff weeks ago. And Lane said he learned about that Sunday night. That's just not true. That's not semantics either. That's just one thing versus the other.
Well, Keith Carter. I know Keith Carter.
He is a man of integrity.
Keith Carter or Lane Kiffin. Who are you going to believe, Brad? Keith or Lane? Keith in a heartbeat. I mean, this is just it's been unsettling But you know what? As you brought up earlier, the move Carter and Boyce made to immediately name Pete the permanent head coach, everything has settled back down tremendously. And look, you know Pete, I know Pete, and look, gritty and grind. Gritty is kind of the word to describe him. This will be a football team on fire, no matter who we're playing in the first round. In fact, let me say this. I feel sorry for whichever team is coming to Oxford to play Ole Miss in the first round of the playoffs. They're going to get, I think they're going to get the hell beat out of them. These kids they're back on board immediately. And, let's go get it done.
We saw our good friend let me just say this. First of all, we saw Eli Manning come out and was very vocal. Eli
loved everything. I loved everything he said.
He does not normally use that X account for public use, but he was very adamant in support of Pete Golding. Terrence Metcalf, our good friend, came out, supported. Mike Espy, a former player, and Tariq Tisdale also came out. I'm not saying they were against Lane Kiffin. They're just coming out and supporting.
Oh, Jarrell Poe.
They're coming out supporting Pete Golding. And I've received so many text messages from former Delta State players and coaches in the college ranks. They've all texted. It's like, man, I did a podcast with our good friend John Cox, and we kind of went down the rabbit hole. We're going to do that in a minute with you too. But we kind of went down the rabbit hole of Pete at Delta State, growing up, coming in as a walk-on. And I received so many texts saying, man, thank you for telling his story, because it's a great story. His parents both graduated from Delta State. And do you remember whenever Scott Eister signed with Delta State, and then here comes Pete Golding and Ryan Barker? Do you remember
100%.
that, David?
Absolutely. And then Scott and Ryan both leave Delta State as Division II All-Americans, and Pete was an All-GSC selection.
Yeah.
Those three guys, and do you know who signed them?
Ron Roberts, wasn't it?
Well, Ron Roberts was the
Rick
head
Rhodes?
coach. Mike Kershaw.
Oh, Kershaw.
My
okay.
good friend.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Mike Kershaw, who's the general manager now at Kennesaw State, former Mississippi College head coach. They shut the program down up under him.
Rice wide receiver coach.
Yeah. He was the wide receivers coach at Rice. Mike signed them all and found them. And Ron was like, heck yeah, bring those guys on. And three kids from the same high school. And look, Scott Eister actually had a football scholarship to Tulane. He turned that down. Not many people know that. He turned them down to come to Delta State because his two best friends, Pete Golding, Ryan Barker, were going to go to Delta State. Pete was a great safety. He was just short, and but he played well on the D2 level. Barker was a little light. He played great on the D2 level, and Eister ended up. Did he win the Connerly? I think he won the Connerly.
I don't know. I'll have to go back and look.
Yeah,
I know he won. Did he win the Harlan Hill?
No, he was a finalist, but
Okay.
he took Delta State to a national title game in which they lost. The one they won was won by Josh Bright in 2000. And if you'll forgive me 1 second, I want to show you something. Oh, okay. Well, I'm dropping stuff everywhere, Brad. Check this out.
Is that Josh Bright's helmet?
This is Josh Bright's helmet from the 2000 National Championship game, signed, of course, by Josh Bright. One of my most cherished things that I have. It's pretty cool, huh?
They beat, was it Bloomsburg State?
Bloomsburg. 64, I think it was 64-17 or something like that. It was a blowout on ESPN.
You know what I
anyway.
what I remember about that season was the week before they played North Dakota State in Cleveland. Do you remember that? And mud was about that thick.
Oh my God. Listen, so I got into an argument. I was the sports editor at the Cleveland newspaper at the time. And they had this guy, I can't remember, but up there in Fargo, who was writing how Delta State would wilt in front of the mighty Bison machine, I think, when they came down. And anyway, I responded to him. And I was like, I wrote a column in Cleveland, Mississippi, and I find out Saturday morning it's published in its entirety in the Fargo newspaper, which I thought was pretty funny. But I took the guy on to task, and I was like, look, you Yankees are coming down here to the South, and you're going to be disappointed like you were at First Manassas, where all the people from D.C. came down to Virginia, and they were sitting on the hills, and they were ready to watch the Federals defeat the Confederates, but it ended up the other way around. And that's exactly what happened. The player to watch on that North Dakota State team, a guy named Lamar Gordon, running back, ended up playing in the NFL for the Rams. He was very good, but with 9 minutes to go in the first quarter of that game, Josh Bright had thrown 2 touchdowns, ran for 1, and Delta State led 21-0. And they ended up, I think the final was like 38-21, something like that. But the mighty Bison fell that day.
I just remember how cold it was and how the field was so wet. It had rained for and I think they played a high school game the day before.
Yeah. It had rained and it was muddy. But I'm going to tell you why it was so muddy.
No, don't tell me this.
Oh, yeah. Delta State played Valdosta State 2 weeks beforehand. Okay, it had sprinkled Friday night in Cleveland. This is a playoff game, mind you. So I go out there, and the first thing I do is I walk on the field, and I'm walking the field, and I'm like, my God, I was in mud up to my ankles. And though he has never fully admitted it, Delta State football director of operations, my good friend Steve Vowell, who is a big-time LSU fan, by the way. Vowell, I believe, turned the sprinklers on that night. And he soaked the field because Valdosta under Chris Hatcher, and Hatcher accused him of it after the game, but they ran a spread offense, West Coast spread and everything. Delta State ran a midline option where 6'5", 230-pound Josh Bright at quarterback could fall forward for 4 yards every time. And, just a side story from all of that. Let me just say that. But I've never gotten anybody to admit it, including head coach Steve Campbell.
Pete plays defensive back for Delta State and is really good. And funny, I know when he walked on, he was a really good baseball player. And John made mention how fast he was. And David, you remember him at free safety, man. He could strike you now. He liked contact.
Oh, look, he was one of the best safeties in what was then the best Division II conference in all of college football. We kind of commonly referred to it as the little SEC. At the time, you had Valdosta State, West Georgia, North Alabama, Delta State. I mean, it was a legitimate football conference. And, I don't know that it is any longer, but, that's where Troy came from. They weren't in the league that year. They had already left. But, man, Pete was incredible. I'll be honest with you. And not only on a lot of people forget this, not only on defense, but he was a force on special teams. Man, I don't remember anybody on that team that could stretch out and try to block field goals and PATs like Pete. He definitely did. But, getting to know him as a person, we were doing Go Green magazine at the time. And we put Pete on the cover of it one month. So I had to get Pete to come up to my office for the photo shoot. And we decided we were going to have Pete with his helmet on, little eye paint under his eyes. But Rory Eddy, who worked for me at the time, now Rory Herbison, she was like, I think she had a thing for Pete, to be honest with you. Rory's going to kill me for saying this. But she was like, we got to take his shirt off. We've got to take his shirt off. So anyway, Pete was shirtless on the cover of Go Green magazine with a helmet on and with eye black. And it's one of our best covers we ever did. And kudos to Rory for insisting that Pete go shirtless. So I've had Pete shirtless in my office before.
His coaching arc began at Delta State. After that, he had stops at Southern Miss, UT San Antonio, I believe.
UT San Antonio, yeah.
Yeah, that's where Saban got him, from UT San Antonio. And then, of course, Alabama, Ole Miss, and some other places. Where do you think his rocket ship started? Do you think it was at UT San Antonio?
No, honestly, I think the record shows it started at Delta State, because if you look at his head coach, Ron Roberts, who was this past season the D coordinator and assistant head coach for the Florida Gators, look at the coaches Ron has put out there. Unbelievable at the amount of coaches. And, Ron doesn't have a job right now. I think he's a guy to keep an eye on, so to speak. Mike Bloomgren, if you remember, who was the offensive coordinator at Stanford, was on that Delta State staff. He ended up becoming the head coach at Rice. And that's how Mike Kershaw got to Rice. It's just kind of a really close-knit group over there that have done some incredible things in terms of football coaching. So I think it'd be fair to say, and I think Pete would say, his rocket ship started under Ron Roberts. And, there's no doubt, he gets over there to Alabama, and as I understand the story, Pete worked about 6 weeks and, without a paycheck. And one day Saban walks up to him and asks him, hey, you want to do this? And Pete's like, yeah. But I haven't gotten a paycheck. And Saban just spits a number out at him on the practice field. And Pete's like, yeah, I'll take that. And then the next thing you know, he impresses Nick Saban enough so that Saban promotes him, the defensive coordinator. And then, look, we're lucky to have Pete Golding. That's the best thing I can say. I mean, we know him. We've known him for a long time. I think he's the best hire. It was the best situation Keith Carter could do, period. Okay? He couldn't open up a national search. If we had a national coaching search going on right now, I think we would have dropped in the playoff poll because nobody would have known anything. Instead, we've settled down rather quickly. Still a couple of spots to add, but I think they've done a great job, and let's play ball. As Will Eccles' mom, Miss Regina, said, spot the damn ball. Hey, let's go play.
He's David Johnson. I'm Brad Logan. Could not do what we do without the Red and Blue Crew podcast audience. You guys are fantastic. Thanks for subscribing, rating, and reviewing us on YouTube. And, of course, when you listen to us on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for our sponsors. Of course, that's the Land Shark and the Velvet Ditch, two great locations in Oxford. Thank you to Jared and his entire team. The absolute best place to go in Oxford when you need a meal or you want to watch a game. You just want to hang out and just relax with some friends. You might see Lance there with his dog Sugar hanging out watching TV. Be sure to tell Lance you said hello and to tell him you heard about it right here on the Red and Blue Crew podcast. Also, John O'Reed and the Dirt Doctor, and then Philip Hearn and his entire team at the Hearn Law Firm. Thank you all so much for sponsoring the show, and we appreciate you watching. For David Johnson, I'm Brad Logan. We'll talk to you again right here on the Red and Blue Crew podcast.